I want to thank the Deputy Thomas Pringle, Catherine Connolly and Joan Collins for putting forward this motion and giving us an opportunity to talk about this. I have to disagree with Thomas Pringle at the outset in his comments that COP was a farce. I don't agree that it was so, and I think the progress overnight was really, really important. Eamon Ryan was one of the EU's lead negotiators there, and he has put enormous effort over the last 2 weeks into two particular things. One was the early achievement of the Loss and Damage Fund and the scale that was achieved at, and that was specifically that was Ireland's priority for COP, or one of Ireland's lead priorities for COP, specifically to try to support small island nations, specifically to try to support those countries whom you correctly identify as not having contributed to climate damage in the way that we are experiencing, but who are very much facing the burden. And Ireland's contribution to that fund was straight away €25 million. We put us at the second highest per capita contributor globally, with the UAE being ahead of us. Now, events may have overtaken and there may have been contributions bigger on a per capita basis, but it is a pretty strong statement by the Irish government to be the second highest per capita contributor to something so significant, and that Ireland and Germany led in terms of negotiations, and that Eamon Ryan and this government pushed in a really, really important way. And it is a real delivery, and it is not unique to the Loss and Damage Fund. While I was in COP as a Deputy Finance Minister for Finance Day, I was able, on behalf of the government, to announce €12 million funding for the Centre for Emergency Response Flooding, which is led by the UN. That put us not just not on a per capita basis, but in the top 10 absolute contributors on an absolute basis, which is just another example of how much Ireland is committed to making sure that this works. And I think Eamon Ryan's work over the last 2 weeks has been really important on behalf of the EU to come out with an agreement which for the first time, has been more welcomed by environmentalist groups, which is really, really important, but for the first time genuinely links, and it should have happened years ago, but it happened this time, genuinely links science and climate change, genuinely names fossil fuels as the source of the difficulty. And it is a big achievement by Eamon Ryan, not just on behalf of Ireland, but on behalf of the EU in terms of delivering that, and it is a step change. So I don't agree that it's a farce. We all wanted to go further, but I think it's really, really important this morning, of all mornings, to recognise the significant change. I think it's also important, if I may, to recognise how taxpayers' money is being used to support how the mobilisation of Irish capital and Irish taxpayers' money is being used to support the transition, and in particular by ISIF. And at COP I highlighted this work internationally, that ISIF, for example, in 2017 took a 28% stake in a renewables company for €76 million Irish taxpayers' money. In 2020, that firm was generating, when we divested our stake down to 4%, generating 528 megawatts of power through renewable sources. In 2023, 3 years later, that output was trebled, with 1,450 megawatts of renewable power being delivered across Denmark, Netherlands, Finland, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Sweden, with €10.5 billion of assets. Again, all originally seed capital from ISIF funding, delivered right across Europe. And in 2030, they will have, they say, and I believe them, 400 gigawatts of renewable energy being generated across Europe, which is an extraordinary multiplier effect of Irish capital being invested correctly by ISIF in projects that are really going to land and really going to work and deliver. This government is not opposing this motion. We have worked, and I want to compliment Deputy Pringle and his colleagues on the earlier work in 2018 in relation to this. I was very proud in COP to be able to say that Ireland was one of the first states to move away, was the first state to move away from investment of any kind in fossil fuels, and the Fossil Fuel Divestment Act obviously achieves that. At the time, we reached a compromise which enabled us to do that, and to be the first country to do that, and to still enable the type of investment by ISIF that I've described, that enables the fund to grow and grow significantly, to be able to mobilise Irish capital in really significant ways. And there are a couple of difficulties with this motion, which we would like to find a compromise. We would like to make sure that we can achieve something further where that's possible, but without compromising both the ability of ISIF to do the kind of work that I'm describing, continue to grow Irish funds, and also crucially not to compromise the ability for the Future Ireland Fund and the Climate Action Fund to be able to invest in ways that we need them to be able to do. I won't outline, because deputies are already more than familiar, the government's position on the Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Act, our carbon budgets. Obviously, we have a significant climate action plan. The update of the Climate Action Plan was published on the 21st of December 2022. and how we setting out how we can accelerate actions required to respond to the climate crisis. But I want to focus in particular on this motion. So the difficulty with this, so the 2018 Act, as deputies are aware, requires ISIF to divest from companies engaged in exploration, extraction or refinement of fossil fuel, which is coal, oil, peat, natural gas or any equivalents. A fossil fuel undertaking is defined as being in the business of exploration, extraction or refinement, which such activity accounts to 20% of the turnover of the undertaking. In the case of a group, the 20% is defined by reference to the aggregate turnover of the group based on the most recently published audited financial statements. In respect of indirect investment, the Act defines that as an investment of assets in the fund in an investment product or a collective investment undertaking, but it doesn't include financial derivative instruments, exchange-traded funds or hedge funds. And the NTMA is required to endeavour that the asset of the funds are not invested in indirect investment unless it's satisfied on reasonable grounds that such indirect investment is unlikely to have in excess of 15% of its assets or such lower percentage as the Minister may prescribe invested in a fossil fuel undertaking. Additionally, if the Act was amended as proposed in the motion, then to avoid being in breach of the relevant statutory provisions, ISIF would have to divest from and may be prevented from investing in very substantial investments which may have minimal or no exposure to fossil fuel undertakings and where exclusions would have no consequence to the issue of fossil fuel use. Deputies should be aware that the call to amend the Act by removing the exclusionary clause within Section 49(1) regarding financial derivative instruments, exchange-traded funds or hedge funds would also significantly limit ISIF's investment universe and the ability to deliver on the commercial mandate, which is very important, and as I've said, crucially, potentially reduce the investment horizon for the proposed Future Ireland Fund and the Infrastructure, Climate and Nature Fund. ISIF has developed a list of 243 fossil fuel undertakings in which it will not invest, having regard to the criteria in the 2008 Act. That list is updated on a semi-annual basis and it is available on the ISIF website, so there's no need for regular review of the legislation. It is happening already and is available for deputies to see. The motion suggests going beyond the current definition of fossil fuel undertakings to include fossil fuel utilisation, defined in the motion to target economic entities that fall within an agreed bracket so as to strike a balance that allows for meaningful climate policy while acknowledging any barriers within the renewable infrastructure. It is unclear what that means within a legislative context, but as I said, this is something where we are aligned in principle and where we would like to find workable compromises that continue Ireland's leadership on this point, but while not hamstringing the very investment vehicles that enable us to deliver projects such as the renewables one that I mentioned, and indeed develop the Irish sovereign wealth position to be able to invest in a range of different projects, crucially climate infrastructure. It should be appreciated, ISIF is a responsible investor, and the overarching approach to sustainability and responsible investment includes ensuring that the whole portfolio, third-party managers and investee companies consider potential climate risks and opportunities as appropriate, and that such risks are appropriately considered as part of ISIF's decision-making and portfolio management. And ISIF seeks to engage with like-minded investors and organisations that share ISIF's ambition to deliver on ESG priorities. ISIF is a founding signatory to the principles of responsible investment, a supporter of CDP, which was formerly the Carbon Disclosure Project, and Climate Action 100+, and an endorser of the One Planet Sovereign Wealth Funds initiative and the Santiago Principles. Ireland is ISIF, we would argue, is already a responsible investor and investing in the sorts of projects that we want to see and we want to see deliver, not just for renewables for Ireland, but renewables for Europe. The government's, I would say more broadly on the government's position in developing on and offshore wind and solar projects in response to Deputy McNamara, we are already a leader in terms of onshore fuel renewables, and the strategy at that stage was to deliver quickly for the consumer and to deliver renewables as quickly as possible. Obviously, from a commercial perspective, at that stage that was easier onshore than offshore. But can I assure you that my commitment as a deputy in Dún Laoghaire, my commitment as a member of government for whatever period that is very definitely to deliver on the offshore opportunity. There is a wind farm proposal beside myself and Deputy Oisin Smith's constituency. We're both very firmly, I'm speaking for yourself now, Deputy Minister Smith, but very firmly behind that project, as we are other projects which will deliver on the opportunity to deliver Ireland as a genuinely energy independent, sustainable state that will put us in a completely different position in terms of not just our our output in terms of energy, our output in terms of fossil fuels, but our security, our macroeconomic security, and our genuine independence. There is a huge opportunity here, and it is for me one of the very essence, one of the basic reasons to be in politics and to remain in politics is to deliver on that alone. So can I assure you that my commitment is very firmly there, and the government's commitment is there also.
Thank you, Minister. We'll move on.